All right. Welcome to week 3, day 4. We're going to be going over mostly utility classes today. So utility classes are going to be like the Swiss Army knife of, sorry, was there a hand that just went up there? No, there wasn't. Sorry, it was in the recording sound. It's like the Swiss Army knife of styles. Basically, it allows you to do whatever you need to do to get things into places you need to get them. They also include some background color, some regular color, that sort of stuff. Let me get the presentation going. And we're going to go over as many of these utility classes as we can today. Some of these we covered in regular CSS, and they'll work very similarly. Some of them are not covered in CSS, or they are in CSS and we just haven't covered them. Or maybe the way they work is slightly different as well. So looking at the documentation, here's all the different utility classes. I'm going to open up this API right here. This allows you to create your own utility classes. It uses Sass, and we're not going to be diving into this one just because it's out of the scope of what we're doing. We can create our own custom classes just using CSS and a CSS file and creating our own utilities. And we will go over that today. So we went over this one a bit, the BG property, and it has all these different colors. There's a lot here to choose from, and we can also add more if we need to. So let me open up some code. That's yesterday's code. We'll do open folder. And I'll start creating my files. I need an index.html. Can't type today. I'm going to create a styles.css. We'll need that later. And that should be good for there. I will import my starter code. And this is a utility bootstrap demo. All right, so I need to import my bootstrap. So I'll go back to their homepage. I like to use the link here. If you ever go to the docs, you can actually get the link out of here as well. I'll just do it this way just to show you. If we hit copy, we can copy this entire code block, which already includes the link and the script. And it even gives us some content to look at. And we have our title there. I'll just leave their title. I'm just going to override my current. So it's the same process. It's just using their starter code instead of the Emmet shortcut. So just a little bit more utility for us. So we'll get into the background. I'm just going to go with a BG secondary for my background color. And I'm going to put this on my body. And I cannot use the dot. And we'll go live and make sure everything's wired up correctly and working. This background color is telling me that it's a very obvious way to see that this is working. We do have a little bit of issue with our contrast here. And this is one of the problems you could run into with using Bootstrap colors is your contrast issues. Because it doesn't really give you much of a warning, and it doesn't tell you the exact color names or give you like the hex codes. If you go into your DevTools, I'm going to remount this to my side. And there's actually a way in here to see the colors and the contrast. So we can see that this has a black background. I'm going to click on the body. And I'm going to look for these colors that are applied right now. So this is it here. It has this RGB 108, 117, 125. So I'm going to grab this color and I'm going to go to the coolers.co. I can't remember where the actual link is in there, so I'm just going to search for coolers.co. And I want the color contrast. And the reason I'm showing you this is just because this is an important concept here. This is showing it as a hex thing. Hopefully this works as RGB. It's going to make me convert it to hex. That's okay. I usually use VS Code to convert things to hex. So if I go into my styles, I can say body, background color, and then I can paste in the hex code, or I guess this is RGB. And it sees that. And then this goes inside of these. And now I can convert that to hex and put this inside of that tool. And we can see we have a very poor color contrast right now. So if I wanted my, oh, I put this in text anyway. This needs to go in background. And my text color is black. I can just type in black. Yeah, so it's still a very poor color contrast. So I can take this and move this around to try to find something better. And we're not really going to get much of a better one with black. So I'd have to, I'm not sure that I can actually get any good contrast with this. This is a little better with white. In this case, I'd probably not want to use this as my main body background color if I have a lot of text content. So just keep this tool in mind. It's really useful for accessibility and making sure you have good contrast. Good contrast will really make your sites pop. So that's an important concept to keep in mind. So whenever you're using these background colors, definitely be checking for contrast. And you can see also they have a color in here. If I do an inspect on that, I can get the actual color that they're using for their contrast out of here. And I believe it's also listed right here. So for secondary, they have text white. So just make sure we're using all of our tools whenever we're using these background colors to make sure that we're getting the most effective contrast out of this. So this right here is a really good source for if you're using this background color, then probably pair it up with the ones that they're providing in this list. So if you're using BG warning, then use text dark and so on. And so I am going to do that secondary with text white. And we'll go there. And we get that better contrast now. And that does look a lot better. Does anyone have any questions about the contrast and how I determined which one to use there? It's pretty straightforward if you just copy their code. You can't go wrong using the starter code they give. All right. So we're going to go back into the margin and padding a little bit. We talked about this before. I just want to go back over this because this one can be confusing to look at in the documentation. And I was kind of going through it quick, just saying MT's margin top. But I really want to dive into this and make sure that everyone understands how this works. So I'm going to create an element in here. I'm going to start with a container. So I'm going to do a div dot container. And I'm going to put my5. Does anyone know what my does?
Margin y-axis?
Yes, it's the y-axis. So this will apply margin top and margin bottom both. And what does this 5 do? So the 5, I like to think of it as a scale of 1 to 5, like a 5-star rating. And it's applying margin or padding. And it has this spacer variable times a number. So let's actually take a look at this in our inspect tool, and we can see what numbers are being applied to this. And I believe it's using rems, so this would be dynamic if the user changes their screen size. So that will be useful. And we can see we have all this extra margin around this now. So if I go all the way to the bottom here, we can see that there's pixels on it for the margin bottom. But it's not actually using pixels to make the determination. It's using the REMs. So let me find where that's applied. And here it is here. Font size is being calculated. Where is the margin? I don't have the right container selected. There we go. So hopefully we can find it in here. I have the HTML selected. So here's the container we're looking for. There we go. So 3 REM for margin top and 3 REM for margin bottom. And it is using the important flag on these to ensure that whatever margin you apply yourself is overridden by these from the Bootstrap. So we can see that that's maneuvering it up and down. And because this is using rems, it's based on our root font size. So if I set my rem font size to be 10 pixels, then this would be 30 pixels. I'm not sure what the default root size element font size is set for Bootstrap. It might not be set, so that would be 16 pixels. It doesn't appear to be. So it would have a default size of 16 pixels. So if you wanted to change that, you can select your HTML or your root. I'll select the root this time, just so it's showing you the other way. Our root is the same as HTML, and we're going to do font size 10 pixels. And I was hoping I could see that change live. Let me select the body, the container. And when we look at the pixel size, we have 48 margin on the top and bottom. So it doesn't look like it. I might have to put the important in here. I did see it flash, and we're still at 48. So these might be just overriding whatever I put in. And that's one of the pitfalls with Bootstrap, is it's very hard to customize unless you're using Sass. Yeah, you have a question?
Yes, Lewis. I was just wondering, here on the inspect, it's got the important right up against the 3 REM,
Mm-hmm.
but you have a space in yours.
Yeah, I always put the space in to make it more readable.
Okay, so it would make no difference on whether it worked or not?
I don't think so. My formatter doesn't let me. So as soon as I hit save, it just automatically pushes it back out.
Okay.
I don't think it matters. There's actually, if you look at the Bootstrap file, and I'll actually show this to you. This is a minified version that doesn't have any spaces in it at all. And everything is written on one line. So this looks like multiple lines, but it's actually all one line of code. And you can see there's absolutely no spaces in anything here.
Right. Okay.
And it reads it just fine. So
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and this is considered machine code. This isn't meant to be human readable. So if you wanted to modify any of your components, I wouldn't try to go in here and modify this file. But if you wanted to, you could get I think we can actually get it like this. Yep. We could actually copy this into a CSS file and edit these to be customized that way. So they're all the different colors and everything are listed in here. This is what those are. So if you wanted to customize your primary background color, that is, let me see, bg-primary. And here's the background color they're using. And we can see that this is using RGBA, and then they're passing in a variable. And then they have this Bootstrap primary RGB. And then they give it a little bit of opacity, which is Bootstrap background opacity. So I'd have to find both of these variables to make this whatever color I wanted. But if I select this one and place it in here, we can then change the default primary color inside of this file. But I would have to download this file. So I'd Control A, Control C, and then I could create a new file in here, bootstrap.css, and then paste that in. And then if I want to change any of the Bootstrap code, I can run this CSS file instead of that CDN, and I can actually modify these different colors here. So here's my primary color. There's my secondary. Everything's listed in here. And then to use this, you would just import it here instead of all this. So if I delete this link, I can say link and type in bootstrap.css. And this will give me the same. Let's refresh this one. I don't know. I have two of these open. And I have all the same styles applied. It's working just the same. Instead of having the CDN, I just have a local file with all of the Bootstrap code. Does anyone have any questions about how I just grabbed all of that Bootstrap code? I can show that one more time in case somebody missed that. So what I did was I actually grabbed the file, or the link out of this href. I'll put that back in there. I'm hitting Control X. So here is the link, the href link. If I copy that href link and paste it into my browser, it will take me to the minified version. And then inside of the link, I delete the .min, and it takes me to the human readable version of it. And then I can copy all of this and paste it into a new CSS file. I call it bootstrap.css. Once I paste it in here, then I can modify this so that it's a little bit easier to customize it this way. Or you can override the styles using your styles.css. Yes, Iris.
And you got all that by removing the dot from what part of that unreadable file?
In the URL, it says bootstrap.min.css. Min stands for minified.
Okay.
Which means it just removes all of the white space. If we remove the .min and just do bootstrap.css, it will take us to the human readable version. So, and this is a really useful way, because you can create your own Bootstrap templates this way. If you wanted to have a very specific color theme and you don't want to have to download an external color theme, you can create your own by downloading all of the code out of this file here.
Okay.
It would be time consuming, but it could have some payoff in the end. It could be a good hobby if somebody's interested in that, just to create your own themes. You could throw them on your GitHub for later, and then just whenever you need them, you can either grab your own GitHub link to the CSS, or you can just download it from your GitHub and use it.
Luis, I'm sorry. So you just copied the link from, you just copied the link and removed .min and it worked. You just pasted in the browser search window. I don't know. Mine is not working somehow.
Yeah. So if I go back into my index, I'm grabbing this href. I make sure I don't grab the quotes. I want to make sure I get the HTTPS to the CDN link. And I paste this into my browser. And it takes me to the minified version like this. Is that part working for you? Did you have it?
Sorry, my settings. Yeah, I'm going there. Just give me a minute. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let me just paste it. Yes, it appeared. So now I just removed .min from the from the address. And
Yep.
let's see. Min, okay. Okay, so now the whole thing, I just copy and paste it over there.
Yeah, so you can use Control A to copy it.
Control A, Control C. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. So this is the y-axis. As we've seen here when I inspected, we have margin on the top and we have margin on the bottom. And I didn't put any on the left and right, so I didn't apply any. Okay, so I'm going to put a class on this called text center. I believe I showed this one a couple times. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It centers your text. But I'm also going to put MB4. Can anyone tell me what MB4 is going to do to this?
Margin from bottom.
Yep, margin for the bottom. So if I inspect my H4 and I make sure, or my H1, and I make sure it's selected, I scroll all the way down. I can see that we have 24 pixels of margin at the bottom of my H1. Okay, so let's take a look at the next one. I want to find the text alignment. So we do have some other ones in here as well. We have text start, text center, and text end. We also have these viewport versions of this. So if you were on a small screen, maybe you don't want your text to be centered. So you could also add a text MD end class at the same time. And where did that go? Let's see how that responds. Close these other ones, they're confusing me. All right, so this is currently set to the right. And then as I shrink my screen down, it eventually gets to a point where it breaks to right to the center. And then as I expand my screen back out, it goes to the right. So maybe on mobile, you want to have this in the middle, but on large screens, you want to have it off to the side. So there might be a use case for you there. Remember, when you're looking at these breakpoints, it's referring to the large. So if I'm on a larger size than what's listed here, that's the style that's being applied. So if I put text small end on there as well, because you can stack these and it's only going to apply the ones that will work for whatever screen size. And this will be SM. And we'll take a look. So we get down to small screen size and it'll center it at small. And there it goes. But as soon as we hit medium, we're back to the end again. So it's a pretty useful thing to be able to put multiple breakpoints on. We'll keep it just on text center though. And I'm going to add a text color to this as well. We'll do I already have text white on it, so we're good on that. I'll do it on my next one that I make. So we're inside of, I'll do it inside of this container still. I'll create a paragraph and I'm just going to put a class on this of margin bottom -3. So far we've done 5, 4, now this is 3. And I'll type in here, Bootstrap provides powerful spacing options. With all of these different paddings and margins you can add, you can really get things down the way you want them to look like. Especially since these are so subtle, whenever you're going from 1 to 2, it doesn't do like a very drastic change, but it is a significant enough change. If you have to go past 5 for some reason, you don't want to go into your CSS and just start adding more margin or padding. You probably need a different layout technique. You probably have something else going on. For example, if you wanted your element to be halfway down the page, adding margin is probably not the right solution for that. You probably want to use something like Flexbox, perhaps absolute positioning or static positioning, relative positioning, some other solution to put it where you're trying to get it. Relative positioning is probably a pretty good approach because it doesn't take it out of the flow of the document. If you remember that from last week. All right, so now I'm going to do another, and I'm actually going to start bringing up these display. There's some display utility classes here. There it is. And these work the same as the ones in CSS. So if you remember, we used display grid and it made it a grid element. We also used display flex. It made it a flex element. We also have inline flex, table cell, table row. So these are a little bit different than what we've seen. And we also have the different breakpoints. So with these breakpoints, you can change your display properties based on screen size. So perhaps you want something to be display flex on a large screen size, but you don't want to have that applied on a smaller screen size. So you can use the different breakpoints for that. So the display flex is a really good way to lay something out. And this is what I was talking about, Omar, that might help you with getting your elements in a row. So instead of using that row property, maybe try using this. I'm going to put a class on here, and I'm going to say D dash, and then whatever property I want to set. So for this one, I'm going to set MD dash block, so that when we're on a medium screen size, it's display block. And I'll put a paragraph in here. Oh, I'm already in a paragraph. So I'll just put some text in here and say this content is block on screens larger than medium. And I'll show you why I'm doing this here in a second. There's actually a really good use case for this. Because remember, a paragraph element by default is already a block element. So here it is. This content is block on screen larger than medium. So if I go smaller than medium, we don't see any changes, and that's because it's already set to block. So this is where you want to start stacking your classes and your utility classes in particular. We can also do D-none. And what this will do is set it to display none, which means there'll be no content on the page. We can still see the content there, and that's because we're on larger than a medium screen size. As soon as I shrink this down, it disappears. And this could be useful for mobile layouts again. You might have advertisements that you don't want to be displayed through this property. You can use display none to make them disappear on mobile, and maybe relay out your entire page using this as well. Does anyone have any questions about why this works or how this works? One thing to keep in mind is it actually removes it from the HTML. So if I inspect this, let me bring my elements down. Watch the element tree here. It's keeping it in there still, but it is removing it from the document to where you wouldn't be able to have anything be pushed from it. And I'll show you that with another element underneath of it. That'll make a little bit more sense. I'm going to set up like a little bit of a flex box here. And this is the solution I was talking about, Omar. We'll create a UL. Actually, I'll make this div a UL. And we'll do li times 3. Item 1, item 2, item 3. And remember that LIs are display block by default, so they're all block elements. So if I put a class b-flex, My quotes didn't pop up for some reason. Then it puts everything on their own line. The same as if I were just to say display flex. And we can also see I have the flex box toggle here. I can select that and actually see the container. This can be really useful too when you're using Flexbox to kind of see how these are going to get laid out whenever you start manipulating them. So we have the classes, the same classes you would use in Flexbox. If you remember, I said across the main axis is justify, and across the cross axis is align items. We have those available here. I'm actually in the wrong, there we go, the right class now. We'll say justify content hyphen between. And now these are spread out as if I were to do the justify content property with the space between value inside of CSS. And I'll show you the CSS equivalent just in case you forgot what that looks like. I'm going to just select the nav here, even though I don't have one yet. And I'll say display flex justify content space between. So this right here is the same as this right here. Deflex justify content between. And you could create these on your own if you wanted to. If you weren't using Bootstrap, you could do something like d-flex. And I'm doing this as an element, not a class right now. So let me change that. And we're going to say display flex. So this would be the deflex class. And then they'll have another one called justify content between. And that would do the justify content space between, just like that. So this is how they set up their utility classes to work. You just put the class on and it applies these properties. So with that, we have all of the power of Flexbox, but not the complexity of the nested divs to get those rows and columns. So if you need to use this to lay something out, this is also a good option. The nice thing about the Bootstrap grid, though, is it gives you out of the box. You don't have to do anything, no media queries. It'll automatically set up all of your breakpoints for you. So it is definitely more powerful and the better choice for responsive design. But if you don't need all of that power, you can just use the normal Flexbox classes to get the same results. So you could use these in combination with each other. You could use the grid system to get your breakpoint set up, and then you can use the Flexbox just to get your general layout working. Does anyone have any questions about what I just did here? Okay. The next utility class I want to show is the border and some of the color utilities as well. So let's take a look at the docs for that. We'll go into borders. We should be getting pretty comfortable with navigating these documentation now. So anything I don't go over today and you need a solution, just make sure you're using your documentation to get to those solutions. It's really important that you get comfortable with your documentation and the ability to read documentation whenever you're developing anything. All right, so we have some different borders here. The first one is showing if I put the border on an element, it's going to place the border the whole way around. So let's take a look at this one. I don't want to use a nav. I'm going to, or the span because it's inline, but actually that'll be nice because it'll be small. So I'll put this in and I'll give it a little bit of content. So here is our border going the whole way around. I'm also going to give this some padding. Can anyone tell me how to put padding on all four sides at once? If I want padding top,
just P?
it's just P, yep. And then a number. I'm going to do P2. We'll see if this looks okay. Yep, that looks good. And how can I get it off the edge of my screen? Using margin.
Use the margin.
Yeah. So with margin, I can do m dash auto. Oh, it's not in a container that spans the whole width, so I need to do that. So I'll create a div. And this div, am I putting this in the wrong spot? I think this needs to go on the parent. I always mess up the margin autos because I don't use it very often. One second, let me find. The, what is it? Spacing. Okay, so this is what I'm attempting to apply. For centering a fixed width. Oh, it's got to be block level content. That's why it's not working. So I did have it in the right spot. See, there's where the documentation comes in handy. We just make this a div with margin auto. But it's centered across the entire screen. So I need to set a width on it now. There we go. Just to show you how that works. So when you have a block element, you have to set a width on the block element to use margin auto. And I'm actually going to use the, sorry, W50. So we're using the utility class to set the width. And we have the same result there. This W class is setting the width to a percentage based on the parent container. When you have a width set to less than 100% on a block element, you can use mauto and it will automatically center that block level item to the center of its parent container. Does anyone have any questions about that? I'm sorry that was a little bit scuffed on that, showing you how that works. But basically, when you have a block element, it still accounts for the whole space across the document. So when you set a margin auto, it can then automatically adjust the margin based on that. And if we watch the margin here, as I change my screen size, it's actually adjusting that margin for whatever it needs to be. I know that's flashing quite a bit, but my margin down here has been moving the whole time for whatever it needs to fit that content. So this is a really useful way to center. My preferred way would be deflex, justify content center. You would get the same result without having to do the margin auto, but you do need a parent container for that to work like that. So if I was going to do the same thing with Flexbox, I would say div. In my div, I'm going to put a span like I did before. And I'm going to give it some content. And I'll put the padding and border on it. And we'll take a look at that result. I should have two content blocks. There's the other one. And then on the parent component, I can do class e-flex. So I just put it into Flexbox. So I'm actually going to go into my div tools and select the flex so we can see what the parent looks like. So if I click on this, and I'm going to toggle this word flex right here. And now we can see that this div is spanning the whole way across. So whenever I set my main axis, justify properties, it's going to move along these hash lines here, left and right. So if I do justify content center, it's going to move my content right to the center. So let's watch that happen. and it's perfectly centered now. These are kind of close together. How can I move these apart from each other?
Margin bottom,
Margin bottom on this one?
or it could be margin top on content.
Yep, either way will work. It wouldn't be on content because this is in a span. It would have to be on the div. Yeah. But basically the same thing. As long as I'm on the parent container, so that it's pushing away. Remember, margin pushes elements away from each other. So we have two divs here, and I want to push them away, so we use margin. Sometimes you might mix up padding with margin. If it makes the content move away from the border and it makes this thicker, I'll show that with the box model down here. So if I add some padding, we'll say like 50 on the div. Might not let me. I think the importance actually overriding it. Yeah, so it's being overridden by the important tag, so I can't even apply it in my box model. You can see that's crossed out right there. If we uncheck this though, we can see that moved down and it's moving away from the border, so we know that I've used the wrong one. I actually want padding, or sorry, margin, not padding. So just one of those little tricks to keep in mind. So here is, I'll put margin bottom. And I could just use MY. It'll put margin top and margin bottom. We'll do 4 for that one. Did I put it in the wrong one? I can see it already. It's on the class that I have set the flex box. You can see that margin. I did apply to the bottom, but I needed to apply it to this one up here instead. So I put it here. It actually needs to go here. MB-4. And that pushes it down. Okay, so that is our spacing and our text. We also have this text wrap here. This is good for when you have a set. You can actually see they have a set width on this container, and it allows it to wrap the text around so that it doesn't spill out of the container. If you run out of room, it might cause the container to the text to stretch out or stretch down. And I'll show you what happens. I'll actually just take their piece here and I'll put it in without the text wrap on it. And you can see how this is spilling out of the badge here. Let me add some more padding. There we go. And how can I center this badge so we can look at this a little easier? This doesn't have a parent container. So what happens if I use mauto here? I never set the width, so it's not going to go anywhere. But if I set W50, we can get it to stretch out that way. This doesn't really show us how text wrap works. For this case, I would probably use Flexbox to center this div, or I could use Grid to center this div as well. All right, so to get this to text wrap, I'm going to apply the text wrap now. Oops. And we can see that that's no longer spilling out of its container, that it's wrapping down. So that's definitely a useful tool if you're having issues with your text spilling out of the sides. Does anyone have any questions so far about any of these I've covered? Okay, so I want to do another, I'm going to go back up to this content here, and I want to show you another border property. Let's go back into border. And what I want to do is kind of round the corners over. We can see that's here. And I also did this yesterday with the cards, with the images. I mean, I had the corners rounded on one side. That's opacity, width. Here we go, radius. So we actually have a lot of different options here. We actually can go straight to a circle, which is pretty cool because this can be a little bit tricky to do with CSS, making circles. You try to make a circle and a lot of times you get an oval. The pill, we can see what that looks like there. So I'm just going to add the rounded to my content. And I'm also going to add it to, there's another content here. And there we go. We have rounded corners on our content. And that looks pretty good. That's a really nice way to just add that fine detail to your page. We also have these different variations of the rounded here. It goes from 0 to 5. 0 is perfectly square corners. This could be useful whenever we get into manipulating things with JavaScript. We can actually add classes dynamically based on things that are happening on the page. So we could say, like, if somebody's hovering this item, we could then remove the rounded edges by setting rounded to 0. And then when they're not hovering, we could set it to rounded 5. That's something we'll get into a little bit in a couple weeks. So that's it for borders. These are all pretty well self-explanatory here. These ones here can be a little tricky to get set up correctly, especially since the documentation has a lot of stuff going on here. So we see this rounded 5, rounded top 0. This one gives it this square edges on the top and rounded on the bottom. And we also have a rounded start pill. It looks a lot like the rounded end circle. So you could kind of get the same results here using two different ones. So that's something you can keep in mind as well if you're dealing with these type of shapes. Okay, so let's bring up the nav bar now. And I'm going to do a custom background color on that. Where's my nav at? So the nav should be in components, nav bar. And I'm going to get a very basic nav bar, one that just has the brand in it. I don't want to get too complicated with all this. And of course, I'm going to put this at the top. Okay, so we don't want to use this BG body territory. If we look at that, it has that kind of off-white look. We want to come up with a different color, but we want to use a custom color. The easiest way to do this is just to create a custom color. So you could say custom, now this has to have a dot .bg. We'll do a color. And I'm going to do just 333, so it's a dark color. And I'm going to apply that to my nav. And this is probably the quickest way to do it. You just create your own custom utility background color classes. I just wanted to show this because whenever you try to select the Bootstrap class, it doesn't really like to play well. So if I place mine on here, and I'll have to link in my state CSS. We can see that it doesn't seem to be applying. And if I take a look at this, it doesn't seem like I have the right one. There we go. We don't have any results there. But we have this right here being applied. So what I could do is run the important on the bootstrap color. So if I go back into my styles, again, these are so difficult to get these to apply correctly. Let's see, do I have that in the right spot? That is where it would go. So I'm going to remove this one off of here. And mine is now working. This should be darker though than the background of the body. I must have something making my background color transparent. But another approach we can do to make this work is if we take a look at the BG body territory, I cannot say that word correctly. We can modify how this one's working. And we can see they are using the important tag here for the color. If I just change this, I hate trying to override their styles because it's such a pain. And it still didn't override it. That's interesting. This is something I'll have to come back and approach and see what's happening here. The only way I could think I can make this work now is by going into the bootstrap file and overriding it. Yes, you had a question? Tertiary? I still can't say it.
Tertiary. It's like aluminum for some folks.
Got it. I'll just call it the T word. But yeah, this is one of the, again, this is like one of the biggest pitfalls of Bootstrap is trying to get customizing. And that's the cool thing about tomorrow lecture is there's a really easy way to do it. I don't want to introduce that right now, but I'll show you that there's a much better way to get these customized colors where we don't have to deal with trying to create our own classes and override them. I definitely can select other individual things and apply those to the background colors to that. I might even be able to put this in a container and style it that way. If I just wrap this in a div, and I want to try my custom background on the div. And make sure I have this the same. I think it was BG custom. I just did custom BG. Nope, they're the same. It seems that I have an error in my syntax because my prettier has the red going on. So let's take a look at that. Line 21, it's not happy with this nav. And it's because I have a div right here, I believe, showing my closing tag.
The div on line 18 has red marks on it.
Yeah, I got two divs going on here. Let's see, line 17. I'm gonna have to do this manually a little bit to see what's going on. Am I missing maybe a closing bracket? So this one's not showing that I have a closing tag. And when I click this one, it shows the closing tag for this div is outside of here. So that would imply that I need to move this one down and add a closing tag inside of here. Oh, that just created a nav for some reason. I'll just do some undos. I'll see where I went wrong here. And we want to put this around the nav. Okay, so it's all happy again, so I'm going to close the terminal. And we're going to put our custom BG on this here. And remove this. Yeah, so that's something I'll have to just mess with it at a later time and see what's going on with this. As far as modifying the color of a nav bar, you'll probably either have to not use the Bootstrap nav class in order to get this to apply correctly and just kind of build this manually, or use the Bootstrap file and go in and modify it, because it does not seem to like me trying to modify it externally like that. I might be able, I'll try one more thing here just to make sure. I might be able to just say style, background color, try red, and there we go. So when it comes down to it, inline styling wins. This is a specificity issue, it seems. So no matter what I was doing, it was overriding whatever I put. So there is a solution there, and I'm actually just going to put my 333 in there. So I've been fighting for this for so long. There it is. So did everyone see how I made that solution work? Again, Bootstrap is one of those things where it's not easy to customize. And that's one of the benefits of a framework too, is because it's a framework, a lot of this stuff's already set up. So you're not supposed to have to do a lot of this customization. You're supposed to just use it the way it's designed to be used. And that's using their colors, not your own. But again, tomorrow I'll show you a way where it's really easy to have your own color palettes. Or you can just go in and change this CSS in here as well. So if I wanted to find that specific color, the T word, I'd be able to change it that way. In order to locate that, though, I'd have to do a lot of fishing through the files. And we don't really have time for me to dive into that. Does anyone have any questions?
I always get the explanations, but when it comes to start the work, I really got to work on it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I've watched a lot of tutorials when I was first learning how to do a lot of this stuff, and I was the same way. I was like, okay, that made perfect sense. Now let me try to build it, and nothing works. But with practice, you'll start to see a pattern for how you can solve little problems. For example, me trying to solve this background color on my nav, I tried about 4 different things. I created a wrapper, tried to change the background there. I used the important keyword. Finally, I just had to brute force it with an inline style, make it work that way. So again, those type of things will come with practice, figuring out all these different solutions and how to get this stuff all to work. As for now, though, this right here, like using this deflex, justify content, the main takeaway for this first hour is you can use all of your CSS tools through Bootstrap without having to write a lot of CSS. So far, we've been able to manipulate things the way we did last week, but without any CSS. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, so this is a good time for our break. We're just over that hour mark. Then when we get back, I'm going to rebuild a card component. I'm also going to share, Ike put in the Slack chat earlier, a way to get random Unsplash images, which I've never seen before. It's really cool. You can get all kinds of random things based on search parameters. So I'll show you how to use that, and we'll build out like another products page. But instead of using the Bootstrap grid, we're going to use Flexbox, but we're going to use Bootstrap Flexbox. Okay, so let me start my timer. And I'll see you in 10. Hey, welcome back, everybody. That was a good break. All right, so I want to go over those cards that we did yesterday. We built like a little product page. We also used the breadcrumbs and the pagination to have multiple pages. We're not going to go over pagination and breadcrumbs again, but I do want to go over building out a product page again. That's going to be part of today's assignment. So if you wanted to follow along at this point, this could be a way to get a little bit ahead on that. So I'm going to lay out these cards using Flexbox instead of using the Bootstrap grid system. This is going to be similar. The planning is going to be similar to how you would do it with CSS. It's also similar to how you would do it with the grid system. It's just the parent and children are a little bit different when you have rows and columns. I will use a little bit of grid in here as well, but I mainly want to use the CSS. I'll just use the whole thing with Flexbox actually for the card itself. So I'm going to actually open up a Figma and just remind you how to plan your components. Go with this one. It just makes it a little bit easier whenever you're building out your HTML. So we'll start with, it's going to have a card container. And this is going to be a container. And then on the container, we're going to have another class called card. So far, these are taking up 100% of their width and height. This would actually be all the way up here, but I want to be able to see the name of it. And whenever I place these, I like to place them so it shows the hierarchy of the components. So if this is the parent component, I always put the child under the parent that way, just so it's a little bit easier to understand. Okay, so with that, we're going to need another component here. This is going to be the one that is our flex item, or flex container. And again, this one's also going to be 100% width and height of its parent. So we're just going to call this one flex. And the next one we want is, we're going to have an image on the left and text on the right. So to do that, we're going to need two items in here. Does anyone remember from Flexbox how we can make these sit side by side? Does anyone remember that? How to accomplish that? If you want your items in a flex container to be side by side. So with regular CSS, the property display flex automatically sets things as a row. So using Bootstrap Flexbox, all we'd have to do is say dflex as a class, and it will put the image on the left and the text on the right. We could also put the text inside of a flex container so that we can use the align items and justify properties. And then instead of this being text, this would be flex column. And this would be the text like that. And then this would be one card here. Once our cards are laid out, we can make it so the cards are inside of a Bootstrap grid system. That way that they're auto wrapping down to the multiple lines. And I think that'll be a little bit cleaner approach than trying to use grid inside of here for a grid layout within our grid layout. Just that many divs gets a little bit cumbersome to look at. And without having some sort of automation through JavaScript, that's a lot of HTML to write. Okay, so I'm going to start laying out this card now. So the first thing we want to do is create our parent container. So that's going to just be a div, and it's going to have a class of container. I could use container fluid, but if I did that, it'll go the whole way across the body. But what I am going to do is on this div, okay, we're outside of that div, so I'll leave that one alone. On my body, I'm going to do container fluid. That way it just takes up the full width and it grows and shrinks with the screen size. Okay, so we have our container, which is now nested inside of a container fluid. So that'll give us a little bit of default padding. So looking at the drawing I have here, I'm actually going to split this. Whoops. Try that again. I don't like it on that side. I'll get it there in the end. There we go. So looking at this drawing that I have here, what would I need next? So I'm inside of the container here. So what is my next component to make this work?
Oh, where you get the image?
Before the image, if we look over here at my drawing, we need this card container.
Oh, yeah.
So the image is going to be nested way down here. So let's put the card in next. And that's just going to have a class of card. And I'm probably going to have to add some padding and margin to these components once I get them all laid out. So what's the next element to go in? So we'll have another div. And this one is going to be our flex container. How do I set flex using Bootstrap? Does anybody have the documentation?
That one, the deflex.
That's deflex, yep. What's the D stand for? Does anyone want to take a guess?
Display.
Display, yep. So it's setting it to display flex. And then if I was going to do that in CSS, it would look like that. I keep clicking on that Bootstrap file. Since I'm doing it with Bootstrap, it's deflex. So it's similar, yet different. We don't have any content in here yet. How many children do we need to have inside of this flex container to have 2 columns?
How many children to have 2 columns? Oh, sorry.
2.
Exactly. So I'm going to use divs. I'm going to just nest my image inside of a div. I always like to put something around an image. I don't like to have an image floating by itself. So if I did the image like this, I don't have any control over the parent of the image, because if I start manipulating this deflex, it's going to also manipulate the text. So I like to always wrap images inside divs. So I always create a div and then an image. And then I can always do things with this div that will manipulate my image. So here is the image, and I'm going to use an SRC that Ike shared inside of the class chat yesterday. Let me open this up a little bigger so I can read it. So it's https://source.unsplash.com/query, there's a question mark. And then you can put whatever you want here, comma separated. I'm going to put tech, just so we get like a text style image. And then for alt, I'm going to say random image from Unsplash. And let's make sure this is working. Okay, so there is a random image from Unsplash. Does anyone know how to make this image fit inside of its container so it doesn't spill out?
Wrap used in there?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is wrap used in there?
Wrap?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how wrap would work on an image. What would be
What about
the
fit
class-
content?
What's that?
Fit content?
Content fit, that would work. I'm going to use image fluid. The content fit will do the same thing. It'll actually make it fit into there. And I'm going to go over that one closer to the end. I'm going to go over the object fit class, but that'll be toward the end of today's lecture. So here is the current image size. I'm also just going to put a size on this. I'm going to do it on the div. I'm going to say style width. We'll go 300 pixels. And you can also, inside of this URL, I believe I can do 200 by 300, something like that, and it will like auto apply. I'm not 100% sure how that works, but yeah, every refresh we get a new image too, so that's pretty cool. Image fluid though will make it take up 100% of its size. And I'm also going to add a height to this. I'm going to put a semicolon, height 300 pixels. This is something you'll see a lot whenever you're working with Bootstrap is developers will use inline styling just because they don't want to create a CSS file. So this is a fairly common practice. So I did want to show you that this is an option, but it is preferred that you use a CSS file. That way you're not dealing with inline specificity later on, especially when we start manipulating this through JavaScript. Let me remove this height. Okay, and this div, I actually have to do a quick inspect and see what we got. Okay, so here's the div with 300 pixel width. And it looks like our flex container is going across the entire container there. That's expected. I just wanted to make sure that this image wasn't stretching. Like the kind of the issue we were dealing with yesterday with those placeholder images. They had all that empty space around them and it made things look weird. But using this Unsplash thing seems to be working pretty good. We have a 300 by 200 pixel image here. And our deflex is still taking up all of its width. And I'm actually going to set a width on my card as well so that the cards are limited to whatever size we need them to be. So we'll do, if I'm using this container, I'm going to say W25. Okay. I may have to adjust my width on this. We're not actually setting dynamics sizing on this. Let me just remove this width and see what this looks like now. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go with this for the moment. I might have to adjust this in a little bit to make this look perfect. Okay, so we have our first child, and that's this div here. This div represents the image. And what I can do to make this clear is start putting comments in here. Image wrapper would be a good comment for that one. And then I can create another comment here, and this would be text wrapper. Whenever you start adding comments in and explaining what each part of your code's doing, this gets a lot easier to manage. So we need a div, a paragraph element, and then we need some lorem. And here's our card. And we can see we have that same thing going on we had yesterday because our sizing isn't stretching it all the way down. It doesn't want to lose its aspect ratio. So it automatically adjusts based on width, but not on height. So we do have some extra space there. As this text grows, the image won't grow any taller than it needs to be. Let me zoom in on this content a little bit. There we go. And as you can see that this image width is locked in right now. If I change my width of my screen now, it should adjust. It does adjust a little bit because I'm using that W25 on the card. Okay, so how can I make it so the image is on top of the text if I wanted that layout instead? Take a look at our Figma here. And this is our Flex container. And we have our image on the left and our text on the right. How can I make this this image be on the top and the text be on the bottom? Anyone remember how to do that with Flexbox? Take a look at the code. Maybe that'll help. So here's our Flex container. And we have two children in it. And they're currently side by side because we're using Flexbox. Let me open up the documentation for this. Because we're using dflex, we'll search it here. And here we can see this property right here, flex column. I'm going to place this on the Flex container. I always grab that period. I wish they'd remove those. And now our image is above our text. I think I'm going to go with this layout for Flexbox, just so that we don't have to worry about having it flip left and right. And it just looks better with the Unsplash image. So as we refresh that, it seems like we're getting this aspect ratio every single time. So I'm just going to stick with the column here for the cards. Yesterday we had a title in here and some small text on the bottom. I'm going to add that in as well. So we'll have an H2. And in the H2, we will say product info. And then we could also include a div right here with a class of badge. And we can say 2.99. Am I in the text? Or maybe I didn't do the badge correctly. Let's see. We'll also have to give it, shouldn't have to give the background color. So BG secondary. Okay, there it is. So we put a little price on there. All right, so this is currently, we have 3 items in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually set this to a Flex container. Does anyone remember how to do that? I want this to be in a column.
You mean a separate column?
Yeah, so I want everything in this div that I currently, I want everything in here to be a column so that it's all on top of each other. It's already on top of each other, but I want to be able to manipulate it. I want to be able to use the align property on it is the goal here. So I'm going to use dflex, flex, column. And we can see our badge is now 100% of the page. I'm going to give this a W25 just so it's smaller. And let's see how they do align self on the Flexbox. Let's just go back. Let's bookmark. Align self. That's what we're looking for. So the align self is a class. Here we go. Align self start, align self end, align self center. So it's just adding this class right here to get it to move around the way we want. So I'm going to put that on my badge. Align self center. And we can have the badge in the center like that. Does anyone have any questions about what I just did there? We do get some weird size images coming in sometimes. Okay. So how does everyone feel about laying out using Flexbox? Just to kind of like build something like this right here. That was a little bit more, I think this is a little bit easier when you're dealing with smaller components like this to use Flexbox instead of the grid system. The grid system's great because you get a lot of out of the box already works built-in media queries. You don't have to worry about if we wanted this to be left and right, we'd have to do a little bit of manipulation to get that to modify like that. I believe we can use the MD property on that. Let's see here. There should be a, yep, here it is. This is for MD column. So if I go to this one up here, instead of just flex column, we can say flex MD column. And this should give us a similar, or do I have this backwards? Flex MD row, and then flex column. Yeah, so that's switching it between column and row based on screen size. What happened there? Did adding that break it? Or am I just zoomed in too far? But does everyone see how I did that? I'm making it so it's side by side on a larger screen. And then as we get down to a smaller screen, it goes into a column. Because I'm using both of these properties at the same time. I'm saying by default, make it a column. But on anything above a medium, make it a row. And this one is going to be listed lower on their style sheet. That's why this one won't be applied while this one's applied. They lay this out so that you can do it this way. So it's all mobile first design. So you set up your mobile first, and then you can add in your larger screen sizes. And that's not all that pretty with the image not being all the way down. So let's see if we can actually figure that out. So whenever we hit a certain screen size, it looks a little weird. And then we also have this tight up against it here. Let's see, where's the gap at? It doesn't look like it has the gap property available. But we do have justify content space between, but I don't think we have enough space to work with that. Gap would be ideal. So we could always add that in manually. And we could create our own, unless it's using the G, we could try the G, the letter G for gap. This was gutter when we were using the other grid system, so this might still work. Grid 3, I haven't actually tested this before. I don't see it being applied. What we can do is we can create a custom class called gap. And we can do like gap3. And then in my styles.css, we could create a gap1, gap2, gap3, and then apply around. And there we get that little bit of gap. So I'll make this gap1. And then we'll do our gap3. And I could do gap4 and 5 if I wanted to as well. This is just a good way to make your own custom utility classes that you can use for building out things like this. All right, let's see if we can get this container to contain that entire image now. So we're going to go into styles.css. And there's some different properties we can use here. I'm going to try the object fit class on this to see if we can get that to play well with this. So we'll do on the parent container. Sorry, now this would actually go on the image container or the image itself. I always mix these up because whenever you're using the background in your CSS, it goes directly on the parent. And when you're doing it on the HTML, then it has to go inside of the actual image. All right, so we're going to create a class and we're going to say object fit contain. And it seems like I broke something here. Let me copy this class so I don't have to retype it. Oh, it's because I already have a class on here. And let's remove object fluid. Object fit contain. So now on our parent, we'll have to actually set a size to that. Let's take a look at the object fit. This is one of the more complex things because you're having to deal with multiple elements at the same time. Yeah, you can see how they have this on an image. It also works on videos. They have that here as well. But we have different versions of this. And hopefully I can demonstrate how this is going to work, because whenever you use this, it actually will crop your image a little bit to make it not lose its aspect ratio. And you can get pretty specific with it, adding in numbers. It doesn't look like it supports that with Bootstrap. We do have the different breakpoints so that you can put this in alternatively for different screen sizes as well. All right, so let me get this sizing set on the div. We'll do style. I'm going to use max width for this so that it does kind of change dynamically. And we'll start with 300 pixels, see what we get. And it doesn't seem like we have our 300 pixel size, so let's see if that's working. It is, but it's still spilling out of the image. So I wonder if our object.fit isn't working. Let's open it up and look. Seems like they have two of the same here. Object fit contain, it's set to important. Let me try the cover. That shouldn't be spilling out like that. a little confused because this normally works a lot better than me having to hard code in the width on these. So it's still spilling out. So if our container is 300 widths and we're containing this within our container, it even says here in the documentation, this property tells the content to fill the parent container, preserving the aspect ratio or stretching to take up as much space as possible. Use the object fit utilities to modify how it's replaced. How it should be resized to fit its container. Yeah, that is really strange. This makes it pick up 100%. I'm going to try this outside of everything else just to see if I'm missing something. So I have a 350 pixel width on this div. This is nested inside of the div. This is really unexpected. I'm going to switch over to some CSS here just to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding something. Or we'll put a test class on this and go into our styles, .test, object fit, contain. This way we're not fighting with Bootstrap. We do have some Bootstrap stuff on here. Let me move this completely out of Bootstrap. That is really odd. You might have to have the overflow hidden property on it. I apologize that this isn't working. Put that on. Oh, I have the class on the wrong. I can do that here. Okay, there it goes. And then with this, you also have to use the object out position to get it to go to the right spot. All right, so if this is set like that, I'm missing one property is why it wasn't working correctly. I would have thought Bootstrap would have had that built in. So I do apologize that that was not working the way we expected. So we need one more class in here. And that is our overflow hidden. And here's the class name, overflow hidden. I got that in style, not class. There. So we have overflow hidden on the parent, object fit fill on the child. And when we look at this, what happened? I made a typo. There we go. It won't take up any more space than what it needs to fit that left and right. We have no restriction on the height. So let's add that as well. I'll add that in code. So we have our width, 350 pixels. So I'll set the height, 350 pixels. And we have our text on the bottom. Let's make this smaller. And I also need to put this back in my card. There we go. Okay, so this can't take up any more space because of the W25 on it, but this seems to be working. Now when I shrink the size down, we still have that width set to it, so it takes off across the screen. So we'll have to set our width from this. And this isn't going to be very dynamic because different screen sizes are going to have different widths. So we'd have to mess with this to get this to actually fit inside of there perfectly. The problem is I'm using this style. I'm going to try using the W property on this. Let's say W25. This is a class. And H25. We don't have any restriction on the height. I'll give it a max height of 500 pixels. Let me put that actually, that's a class name. It's not a style. Let me put this on the card. The card should have a width. So we already have a width. We need a height, max height, 500 pixels. We're still getting this spillover from this. We'd have to do some more overflow work to get that to look right. Again, this is where I just like to make my images the exact pixel size that I need them to be. And then I can stretch them and grow them based on whatever my needs are. So, does anyone have any questions about how this is working and what the purpose of the object fit is? It's not very clear, I know, with my demonstration here, but it's supposed to make it take up exactly the size of its parent container. This might not be the best use case for it because I'm nested inside of a dynamically changing container. So I'd want to use this on something that isn't going to be changing the sizes on, because whenever you use object fit, you're supposed to hard set the pixels so that they don't flex on you. But my container size keeps changing, my width set to a dynamic size. It's just not really working that well inside of this card here. But if I had something like a profile picture up here in my nav bar, as long as my profile picture is never changing its sizes, as my nav bar changes, it shouldn't change, then that would be a good use case for an object fit, just because that image is just going to rest right there and not try to flex and grow with the container. So hopefully that clears up like what it's actually used for. I'm kind of going outside of the scope of that by trying to place it inside of this card to make this work more dynamically. I probably should just stick with my fluid size on this. So I'm actually going to put that back on instead of this object fit. This is where you would use the fluid sizing for this. And then we'll get rid of this. I'll keep the overflow hidden just because that's not going to hurt anything. And our card has a max height of 500 pixels. We don't need that anymore. We'll let this grow and shrink as needed. And then again, on smaller screen sizes, this will look a little better because we have the text on the bottom and the image on the top. And then if we needed to create multiple cards, this is a lot easier to do now because we have Flexbox available to us for that. So I'm just going to create a container here. This is going to contain all of the Flex cards. So this will be, I'll create a main. And inside of this main, I'll give it a class of dFlex. This will make it a row by default. So everything will be lined up left to right. And I'm going to take this card and I'm going to duplicate it in here a couple times. So here's one. And I'm actually going to put a code comment in here so that this is easier to see. Let's call it new card. And then underneath of this, we'll do another code comment, new card. And to remove that one, I'll just copy and paste this again. And now we can see these are coming out side by side. I pasted a third card apparently. Oh, I still have my original one here. And this is set to Flexbox, so it's going to make these in a row. Let me make my screen a little wider here so we can see that. And it looks like they're pretty far apart. I'm assuming that they're taking up their full width. They are. The div container goes the whole way across. So let's see what we can do about that. That's because we have the W25 on the card. But we should have that on the container instead. There, that looks a little better. I'll have to do the same thing to the other one. It's little details like that that can kind of break things. Hopefully it made sense how I knew to move this up. Being that this is 25%, it's going to be based off of the parent container. In this case, the main is the parent for both of these, since these are both siblings. And because this is a 25% thing, I should be able to fit 4 cards, unless the space in between them is going to affect that. Then it will only allow 3, but if that's the case, we can always adjust it. And there's our 4 cards. Next thing we want to do is put wrap on this so that they'll actually spill down to the next line. I'm not sure if it's enabled by default, so I'm just going to try adding 1 more card. And it's not. We're getting 5 cards there. But you could also just use the grid system for your main. That way you can set your actual columns. That actually might be an easier way to do it, where you would say row, and then on each card you would place a column MD dash, we'll do 4, or sorry, 3 if we want 4. So column MD3. And we can scroll down, we see the new card comment. That makes it easy to find. Column MD3. There we go. Does anyone have any questions about that? So we have our 2 column cards on widescreens, and then it switches to a stacked column with 4 across that way. And I could add some more in here if I wanted to change these to MD, say 6 or even MD12 on mobile sizes so that these are all stacked. That's another option as well. For the assignment, it's going to be pretty much the same as yesterday's assignment. Let me get that opened up. The only difference is I want you to utilize the utility classes as much as possible. Use the Flexbox, try to lay some things out using this dflex. You can implement the rows and columns for your primary layout, but try to lay out the card itself using the Flexbox. You could also choose to use grid if you want. I didn't go over that one, but feel free to use that in place if you're more comfortable with the grid system. That is in position, I believe. No, not position. It might be under grid. I'm just going to type in grid. Layout grid. This is a different grid. You do have access to the normal CSS grid system. I'd have to look for, I think it's just D-grid. Did I spell that wrong? They're using it here. Not sure where it's at in the actual docs, though. We'd have to dig through that to find it. I've seen it earlier, and I already lost my place on it. Maybe it was in Flex. There's a lot of stuff in here. CSS grid. Here it is. So it's just a class called grid. And then you can set it up using G column 4, G column 6. So if you prefer to use this, you can for the primary layout of all your cards. This one actually looks pretty simple to use. So if you want to do that, have at it. The docs are right here. As far as the assignment goes, let me get that back up. This is the day 4 assignment. I got the right one up. Week 3, day 4, yeah. All right, so you want to make sure you have your you want to make sure you have your styles.css whenever you're overriding any styles. Make sure that's linked properly. Make sure you have your bootstrap linked properly. And it looks like there's, yeah, this is it. So the structure of your page can be built out similar to your product page from yesterday's assignment. We have get the reps in, build it out again, modify and adjust the responsive design from what you learned today. So what we mean by this is just don't copy and paste your old code. Write out new code each time. That way you get used to finding what you need through your documentation and actually building this stuff out. Because if you keep on just copying and pasting the old stuff, you're not going to get that muscle memory, which is very important whenever you are trying to do this on your own and using this in your own projects. If you're just going to start copying and pasting your code, then it's not good in the long run. It'll only hurt yourself. So make sure you're actually building these out. Let me open up the rubric. So this has integrated the majority of what we went into today. I'm not expecting that you'll use every single element that I went over today, because I did use quite a few. But you definitely want to use as many utility things as you can. So make sure you're using your margins, your paddings, implement that deflex. If you want to put in the grid from CSS, do that. And if you want to use your grid that we went over yesterday with the Bootstrap grid system, implement that. Looking at this here, all the necessary files are created. All Bootstrap elements introduced this week were used or attempted to be used. We only briefly went over like the spinner. I'm not worried if you don't have a spinner on your page, because we don't have any sort of things that would use a spinner. So this one would be hard to implement unless you just want to throw a random spinner on your page somewhere, go for it. But if you don't have it, you're not going to get docked for not having a spinner, just because it doesn't really make a lot of sense. The card, nav bar, the alert, the badge, just get as many as you can in there. And all the content being relevant means is that you're just not putting a lot of gibberish on the page. You're making it look like kind of a professional layout. So like say product 1, maybe throw a little bit of lorem ipsum in there, but have some real content too, to kind of give it some reference on what you're actually trying to build. So if you're building a portfolio, have a couple pieces on there that represent a portfolio. If you're building a blog, maybe have like a blog title so that that's obvious that layout is for that site. And if you're building a product page, make it kind of look like a product page. Have a couple things on there that would indicate that, hey, this is a product page. That's what you're looking at right now. And that's what we mean by this content here. Does anyone have any questions about that? Any questions about the assignment? Yeah, so I'm expecting the assignment to look similar to what I have here at minimum. It doesn't have to look pretty. It just has to allow you to understand how these components work and interact with each other. Maybe like for this one here, I could put some padding on the top of this, or margin on the top of this, so it's not pushed up against that. After that, this would be good to submit where it's sitting right now. Something along them lines. The main thing is we're getting comfortable with everything. Okay, and I've gone into this third hour quite a bit, so I'm going to start the 10-minute timer. Take your break if you need it, and then you can get started on the assignment. And again, if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to ask. If you're stuck on any of these components, we can try to work through it. I'm going to look into this object fit thing a little more so I can do a better demo in the future with that. I'll probably go over it again tomorrow just to make sure that that's fully understood, because that was a little bit scuffed trying to get that in there and make it look good. When I've used it in the past with CSS, I didn't have those difficulties. It actually looked really good when it was implemented. So I want to see what went wrong there with that. It should look a lot like this. Okay, so let me start the timer. And I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everybody. And I found the problem I was having. I redid it with CSS and muscle memory kicked in. I never put a height and a width on my image. So with Bootstrap, it's the same concept. I'll show you what I did here. It's actually this image here on the bottom left for anyone who's interested in seeing how this works. So let me bring up my code. So whenever you're using object fit on the image, you have to take up 100% of the height and width of the container. And the container, you're setting the height and width manually with pixels. So I use 200 pixels for height and width here. And I set the image to be 100% of the container. And this is why it wasn't working, is because the image never had its height and width set previously. So I'm just going to go through these real quick. We have cover, which this is actually cropping the image a little bit. So the outside edges are cut. We have contain. This one, the image is a little bit taller than the container, so it's also cropping that down a little bit. There's fill. And I'm trying to remember the rest of them. I go to my CSS. I do object, fit. It's contain, cover, fill, and none. We also have scale down too. So that one's a useful one. If your image is really large and you want to maintain your aspect ratio, you can use that scale down. That must not be a real class because you can see it's stretched now. So let me see how that works with Bootstrap. That would be a utility. Object fit. It's just scale. And object fit scale. And it just kind of shrinks it down a little bit. Does anyone have any questions about that, or why it wasn't working before and now it is? Anything along them? It still wouldn't be a good fit for these cards because the card sizing is changing dynamically. So this container, it can't maintain 200 pixels because its container is going to change its size. So that wouldn't be a good use case for it there. But if I were to put this somewhere static on the page, maybe a user profile picture, like on a portfolio, you have a big image on one side and some text on the other, that could be a good use for it. Something that isn't going to be changing. Instead of changing the image size, you just want to change your layout to make it work. But yeah, important classes to remember when you're using object fit. Make sure you have a container with a set pixel height and width, and you have an image with the height and width set to 100% of its container. Maybe I could make that work using, I'll try it real quick. Never done it with a dynamic size before. So this is the one I applied it on. Use a different image for that one. So that doesn't look terrible. But you can see how it's behaving a little bit weird there. So I guess you can use it in the card. You just have to kind of set it up for that. Maybe if I set the height and width. No, that ain't gonna work. So yeah, that's as good as that would get on a card. And does anyone have any questions about what we're doing here in this assignment? And I do apologize for forgetting that. That's one of those things where whenever I'm switching over to like a framework like Bootstrap, I'll have to go ahead of time and work with this stuff because I usually don't use Bootstrap for my styling on my own projects. I typically just use CSS. Bootstrap's good if you're trying to put a lot of stuff out quickly, but when you're working with a designer, it's hard to use something like Bootstrap because they want certain colors. They want certain things set to exact pixel sizes, and Bootstrap isn't the best for full customization. We're also quiet today again.
Oh, I was gonna say that, yeah, I feel the same thing that yes, you are working with when we are working with Bootstrap, Yes, it gives you some power, but then it gives you limitations as well. So what I was trying to do, I was trying to just find a way around, with CSS, because that's what we done in the beginning, and I'm still more comfortable with doing it in CSS. So yeah, Bootstrap is a thing, but I think is there a best practice in market that you will be following, like in general, doing with CSS or JavaScript? Bootstrap may not be that handy in practical environment.
So I have a lot of connections in the industry, and I've actually asked that exact question to most of them to see what they're using, like what kind of tools they're using. There are some that are using front end frameworks. Most of them are using Tailwind right now because they're using a JavaScript framework, and it works really well with that. And it's a little bit more customizable than Bootstrap is. I do know of at least two people right now that are using the default vanilla Bootstrap 5, but they're only building things. They're freelance developers, so they're only building things for like small businesses, and they don't work with a designer or anything like that. So as a freelancer, it's definitely a good tool because it allows you to maximize your time. If you need to produce something quickly for somebody, because your time is valuable when you're working with small businesses, you're not getting paid by the hour, you're getting paid for the project. You definitely want to use something like Bootstrap to knock it out quickly.
So what I feel that moving forward, whatever we learn with CSS styling, and I think it's going to be integrated. That's what maybe I'm wrong, but it's going to be integrated with JavaScript. And I think we will not be using Bootstrap that much. Am I correct or not?
You can use Bootstrap with JavaScript because typically with JavaScript, when you're applying styles, you just use JavaScript to give something a class name. So what you would do for like this div here, I could give this an ID, and I'm just going to call it like an ID of find me. So I would use JavaScript to look for this div. And once I find it, I can tell JavaScript, give this div a class of dflex and a class of flex column. And if I have my Bootstrap linked in my HTML, it'll apply the Bootstrap styles using JavaScript to do it. And it would work the same way if I was using vanilla CSS. In here, I would have to create my styles. So I would create, for example, if I wanted to just make something disappear, I could say hide this element and then set this display none. And then in my JavaScript, I would apply that class. Let's say I wanted to hide this div. I would just say, put that class on there using JavaScript, and it just disappears. So it works the same way. And I can do the exact same thing with Bootstrap. I could just say d none, and it would disappear the same.
Yep. So Luis, if you can help me with I'm still stuck. I've done most of the thing today, of following you, but I'm still stuck with the picture sizing. I want you to take a look at it. I don't know where I'm going wrong.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the more difficult things to deal with. So I'll definitely help you with that. But yeah, I mean, if you're not fully comfortable with Bootstrap, I wouldn't fully dismiss it, just because you may need it occasionally. My preference is to use CSS or Sass, depending on how I'm feeling that day. Either one's good. You'll be able to take the screen share now.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to put both screens on one page, so because I'm extending the screen, so you won't be able to see the second screen. Hold on, give me a minute.
Okay. Yep, take your time.
Yeah, so I'll keep myself unmuted, and then I think I accidentally closed the window. Let me just open it live. Maybe. So, okay, so I'll extend it for the presentation. So this is how it's looking right now. You see that the
Yeah.
bottom right?
I noticed you have the class image fluid instead of IMG fluid. Maybe that's the.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me go back. That was good. If that's the thing. Right here. Okay. IMG. Oh, so now it's so it went down to 100 pixels. Okay, I see. Okay.
Yep. See how it sits there if you don't have a width set to it.
Yeah. Okay. So every time because a random picture appears,
Mhm.
it's still the size still changes. So how can we just fix it? So you said we need to put some
Or
height width
set
on
the
it.
height too, height and width both, where you have the 300 pixels.
Okay.
And then that way your container never changes sizes. Did you put a semicolon in?
Oh yeah, I did, but I think I missed it. Let me do it. Okay. Height.
So that should turn that into a square. And then on your image, give it the W100 and H100
On my
on your
image.
class for the image, where you have image
Right
fluid,
here. Right here.
where you have your image fluid class.
Oh,
Add two more classes, H100 and
right. Within this thing, right?
yeah.
Like with the semicolon. Okay.
You don't need semicolons though.
Oh, okay. What would it be? H
Yep, dash 100.
dash 100 and oh W dot 100. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Now it's a square. Okay.
Yeah, and then if you want to replace your image fluid with that object fit, that will actually work now. And then you can try switching between object dash fit dash contain because it's not applied yet.
Right here. Oh, so what we want me to do? Sorry.
Set it to, we'll try cover, object dash fit dash cover.
Oh, dash cover. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's working.
I think so. Okay, that one there would be a, see if you can find an image that is,
I think the size is now same. What do you want me to find? Like,
one that looks like it might be cropped,
okay,
just to make sure. I'm not sure how, because all these
Yeah.
images are like, they look really good to me. Like I don't see any.
Oh, so you want me to pick some other category from here?
Yeah, maybe another category, like a people category.
Okay, okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah, just so we can make sure that
Because
it's scaling
with
it.
nature, you can't really tell. Yeah.
Yeah,
How about even with this thing, you can't really
yeah,
tell.
you can't tell. It could just be good.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that it was sitting properly and working properly.
Mm,
Maybe another refresh, see if we can get a single individual in there. It's got to be working correctly. Everything in here looks good. Yeah, so based on that one where the top of her head was cropped a little bit, I think it's working correctly.
mhm. So now that we have here, I think I need to apply that the row or column thing, so it comes here instead of being at the bottom. The text, I mean, it has to be here on the side, right?
Yeah, you want the text on the side.
Yes, please. Because
So when we look at your containers,
let me just expand it a bit. Maybe it changes. No, it's okay. It stays at the bottom. Okay.
yeah, so you have your div with the image inside it. That needs to be a sibling to your text, which it looks like you have an H2 and a P tag. You'll have to put those inside of a wrapper. You have the comment for the wrapper, but you don't actually have the div there for it.
This one,
The other one.
this one.
Yeah, see how your H2 and your P tag are siblings to the
Oh,
div?
yes.
They need to be contained, so you only have one or two children inside of your deflex. Currently,
So it has to go. The P has to go.
you
Oh,
just
I'm
need
kind
another
of
div.
lost. Another div.
Yeah, and it's gonna wrap the H2 and the P tag together,
Okay. Let me see.
and maybe your badge as well. You might want to include that inside this div. You just want to contain everything in one spot is the idea. All of
So
the
badge
stuff that
is-
you want in the right column needs to be in one.
If it has to go down right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So where is that deflex sitting in relation to these now? You have it set as a column currently. What you could do is say deflex dash column, and then you could do
This.
no, it's on line 32. You could add a second class there,
Okay.
and it would be flex dash md dash row. That way, when you're on a larger screen size, it goes to the row.
Oh, okay. So now, okay, let's see. Okay. So now it's cropping the image, right? Or whatever, it's resizing in a very odd way.
Yeah, it is resizing it in an odd way. What might correct that also is putting a max width on your card, or using the column system on your card. So that would be on the container W20 instead of W20. You could put
So
row on that deflex main.
right here,
Yeah.
deflex dash row,
No, just row.
a row. Okay. Okay.
And then you could make your card into a column using
Right here.
the no, it'd be on line 27. That's the start of your card.
Oh, 27. Okay.
Yeah.
27. Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't want me to make a container? That's what you mean?
No, a column like COL dash 6 maybe, or 4 or whatever size for the instead of the W20.
Oh, you want me to remove W20?
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Oh,
You had it almost all correct. You just had to
what was
delete the
there?
W20.
Deflex a row. Okay, row.
Yep. Yeah, so instead of deflex, do row.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you want me to remove deflex?
This would just be for the Bootstrap grid system.
So the class would be just row, no deflex.
Correct.
Oh, I see. Okay, let me just remove it then.
Yeah, sorry that wasn't clear. So that would be the row, and then you would have your card set as a column. Instead of
so-
W20, you'll do COL dash whatever
Dash.
number,
So let's try for.
and then you'll need your quotes closing that out.
Oh yeah. Okay, sorry, I understand. Yes, really miss these tiny people.
Okay.
Okay, it's like a very tiny card. Something is going on.
Yeah, so I kind of expected it to do some of that. We'll have to look and see where is your image width being declared at.
Oh, I think, hold on. I think I did also something.
Because it is shrinking.
Oh, no, that's on nav. I don't know why is it here. Do we even need it here? I don't know why I put it there in CSS.
You don't need
Nav,
to do that in CSS. Whenever you create a nav, it's already set to display flex and all that. Oh, I think I did that with my UL earlier.
I think maybe, yeah, maybe they're just trying to follow along or something. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it did something to the picture. It was,
It gave a different picture because it refreshed. Okay, so we'll look at the width of the image in the image parent, and you have it set to 300 pixels.
right here.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
should be working. What about its parent? What's it set to? It's set to flex column. I don't see anything that should be affecting the width of that image, though. Unless the text is taking up that much more space than it should be.
You want me to, okay, hold on a second. Just to check it. Yeah, I got a little bit.
Give it a couple refreshes, see if it changes the.
Yeah, it's a little bit more.
Okay, so this is another thing we can do here. Let's go back to the code here. So we have those two parents. So the width you have set to 300 pixels on your style.
Mm-hmm. So we
Um,
can increase it or
well, if you increase it, it probably won't do much. Try 600 pixels. It's probably not going to do much.
yeah, not that
Yeah,
much.
so it's actually scaling it down. So whenever you would switch to your other layout,
Is
it's
this
probably going to.
something to do with it? Height 100 with 100, this thing?
No, it has nothing to do with that. I actually ran into the same issue when I was doing the demo. It's scaling it. If you could make this switch to a row real quick by changing your screen size, you'll see what I mean. It did change it to 600 pixels. You just can't see it right now.
Oh, yeah.
You'll have to go smaller to get it to
Mm-hmm.
shrink it down a little more.
Oh, yeah, I don't even have a mouse. I mean, I need a mouse. I know it's really gives me a hard time to control it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do it with the.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, see how that's now really wide and your text isn't really wide?
Mm-hmm.
The part of the problem is what I was mentioning earlier, is when we hard set the width on our container, it doesn't work very well with Bootstrap because it's not dynamic anymore, but Bootstrap's still trying to be dynamic. So if we could set dynamic widths on this, that would probably solve it. So if you go to that div, remove the style off of it completely,
Which
and
slide?
34, that whole style attribute, we'll just take
Oh,
the whole thing off
okay.
and see how it sits there just by default without the style attribute.
Oh, what did I do?
You took everything.
Yeah, I removed the bracket.
All right, so now it's taking up half of the.
Yeah, it's taking a little bit of shape here. Let me just expand the screen. Half of it. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Let me just, okay. What
Is
happens when we shrink it a little bit? Okay, it goes, okay, now.
yeah,
This
so
is,
there's like a couple spots where it's like it's not perfect. And
mm-hmm.
if you want to make it more perfect, that's where you have to use those breakpoints to change it early. And you can do something like on your image, you could say W-MD-75. Sorry, not on the image, on the div it's the image's parent.
Right here.
Yeah, you could give this a class name of something along the lines of W-MD-75 or something like that, so it takes up more space or less space if you want to go a smaller number with it. And then whenever you get onto that small screen size, it should change the entire thing. You'll have to shrink it down to get the effect. Because it's switching to the column on medium screen, you won't see it. So you might have to change it sooner. So maybe WLG instead of WMD. And yeah, it doesn't really seem like it's fixing that issue. So I guess the next one would be your card size. If you change the card size on this screen size, where you have call 4, you could do
Want me to
call.
bigger or smaller?
Go bigger by default. Go like call 8 or something. And then do a second class like call MD-4.
Right here.
Right beside the call 8.
Okay, so call MD dash what 8?
A smaller number, like a 4 or a 3. And what this will do is when you're on smaller screen sizes, it will apply the smaller one. But when you're on larger screen sizes, sorry, I got that backwards. When you're on smaller screen sizes, it'll do the column 8. But when you're on larger screen sizes, it'll apply the column 4.
Oh yeah, I see. Okay, let me see something. Where is I like to play around. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it expanded a little bit. So
And then maybe change that column 8 to the smaller one. I think I inverted it on you there. So column 8 would be like column 4, and then column MD would be the bigger number. I always mix these up because I'm used to doing media queries, which are opposite. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get you to do. And then shrink it down and see how it swaps. There it goes. So right there, that one would be your, that's where you need it to be larger, is when you're on that smaller screen. Try switching that 4 to a 12.
right here.
Yeah. And then go to the small screen size. So that's going to take up the whole screen now on small screens.
Oh, okay. So this is the right way, you mean, right?
Yeah. So
Because
I told
the
it.
text is under it and the picture has expanded to the whole screen almost.
Yeah. So with a column of 8, it's always going to be a vertical version. You would have to, the largest you could go with call MD would be 6. If you want to have this be side by side, your cards, you'd have to go 6, 4, or 3 for your call MD.
Okay.
Unless you just want to have your cards all vertical all the time. Whenever you have multiple cards, I mean.
Mm-hmm. So, so with these values, can I just duplicate them now? Or you think that they're gonna be side by side? Well, I think I need to. Okay, we added row there already. So let me just copy paste it. Let's see how it goes.
Before you do, you're going to be making a column instead of a row because your column MD is set to 8. It has to be 6 or under in order to have a row.
Oh, okay. So you want me to drop this value a little bit?
Yeah, at least down to a 6.
6, yeah. So divide it into 2s.
Yeah, that way you can at least have 2 side by side.
Okay.
And you shouldn't see anything change. I guess it would have to. Sorry. Yeah. And now whenever you duplicate this, put a couple comments in, or at least one comment in, so you know where the top of your card is. So to go right above line 27, you could put a comment. And just say top of card. You want to do this as a code comment.
Yeah, I know. I'm just.
Oh, you're just going to type it first? Okay.
That's what I do. Oh. What happened? There you go.
Perfect. Yeah, that just makes it easier to work with your code because you'll be able to find that whenever you have multiple divs.
Mm-hmm. So I can just copy now from here, right? So
Copy the comment too.
comment to okay. So and we are going up badge including up to this div, I think.
You're going to go all the way down to line 54.
Line 54. Okay.
Yep. If you look at your main, that's the parent of the card itself.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay, okay, I understand that. Okay. Control E. Bottom of the card it keeps suggesting. Okay, let's paste it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, oh, whoa, what is that? What kind of bike is it? Bike.
I
Okay,
have no idea.
no bike in it. Okay. So why is it changing the size now? Because of the picture size?
Yeah, the picture size is so much different.
Okay.
And you can't put like a hard coded height on it because of that issue with the, yeah.
So
But
how can we control the symmetry of the website then? Because of course no, actually we're not gonna be using these random pictures. But those pictures will be static, of course, so they'll stay.
yeah.
So
Well,
that
also the other thing is, if you get into a situation where you do have dynamic images coming in, let's say I actually built a campsite review website one time, and I made it so users could upload images of the campsites for like it's kind of like I called it Yelp Camp. But yeah, basically they would leave these images on there and they were all different sizes. And that's where I used object.fit to fix that. But I was able to hard code my heights on my parent container where you currently have WLG75. I had the pixel width set there so that it never changed. And that solved that issue. With what I see here, you might be able to do something like that with just the height.
Right here?
Yeah, if you just put a style and then a height on that, it'll be outside the class, yeah.
Yeah.
But you'll have to see how that behaves whenever you switch it to column.
So style height, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Fit. Can we use fit content or something? No, but if we use fit content, then it's still gonna be dynamic then.
Yeah, it's too dynamic. You'll have to put an actual pixel value in there.
Okay, so what do you want me to do, like 300 pixels or?
Yeah, 300-400 pixels somewhere in there.
Okay.
It didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Oh, you also have the WLG75 on there still.
Oh, you want me to remove it?
Yeah, that'll probably override your style.
So you want
because
me to
they're
remove
using
the whole thing with like this whole class, right?
Yeah, just remove the class.
Okay, let's see. Oh yes. Oh no, still there is a tiny bit of difference.
Well, it might be because your other card, you only applied this to one card.
Oh yeah, okay, I see. Yeah, Dave. Image
So if you just want to copy that whole div, you can overwrite this one with it.
Style height 350. There you go. Okay. Yeah, now it's looking better. I mean, I have a bit of OCD, you know. I like.
Right. And so now what this is doing, it's actually setting the aspect ratio to always be a height of 300 pixels on your object fit.
Mhm.
And that's why it's cropping that image a little bit on the one side there.
Yeah, this one, it seems like it's floppy. You can't really tell about this one though.
Right.
Mhm.
And there is a solution for that as well.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's a Bootstrap class for it, but you could set the center property on it. But it looks like we could slide that over a little bit too on certain screen sizes. Where is that set at? It doesn't look like it's set.
What are we looking for? Sorry.
On that same div where you have the height,
Okay, right here.
put a class back on that again and try doing a W50. Just see if it takes up 50% of the container. You lost the S on style.
Yeah, okay, I don't know what happened there. Okay, we got to the space.
Yeah, it didn't give you 50, but it did give it a little bit.
Yeah, on bigger screens it looks better, but on smaller screen, yeah. Especially this one is too compressed.
Right.
What is it?
Try W100. I don't think that'll work, but just in case.
Also, I have to apply on the other one too, actually. I'm not just applying on one of the
Yeah,
class.
I'm actually surprised that helped. Yeah, the Bootstrap styles are written so weird. When you look at the code in there, it's hard to follow because they wrote it all with Sass, and then it gets converted. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, it looks nice, yes.
Does anybody else have any questions? We are running past the the class time now. I'm going to stop the recording so it doesn't get any longer. But this was, I'm glad that you,
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean,
yeah,
did it
I'm glad we
really
got to
help a
do
lot.
this because your little demo here was, we got to use the object fit and make it work and everything. So
Yeah, when I write everything with my own hands, like